We are going to pass into something that we're going to call spiritual maturity. Maturity you understand, and you would apply the word because when children are no longer children and they start to be young men and women, you will look at them and say they are maturing. When they pass a certain kind of age and they're starting to understand what you know and have known all along, adults, you will say that they are now matured. But they have a wisdom factor that they did not have as children. Children have childlike thoughts and believe certain kinds of things until they mature. So you're starting to pass a maturity marker that is going to require that you understand the following things that I'm going to list for you. Earlier in the year, we started listing some things that ask you to have what we would call spiritual common sense. Now we are enhancing it, spiritual maturity, using new wisdom and common sense to look at some of the things around you in a way you never have. Some of these are going to be controversial. They're controversial because they fly in the face of what you've been told. Perhaps even wounded part of you which wants to do something, and I'm telling you, perhaps it's time to move. Things that maybe you are attached and feel good about, and I'm telling you it's time to discard them. Sit down and think about your lineage. Think how long you have been on this planet. Think about the human nature you have gotten used to. Think of the battles that you've been through. You didn't wake up this time to become an old soul. Let me tell you, most of the ones in the room have fought the old energy for a lifetime. Old souls know. Some of you have come into the planet only to leave quickly because you said something wrong. Some of you have tried all your life to accomplish the kinds of things that now you're starting to see on the planet. Most of you have come in with what I call an Akashic agenda, built to awaken, and in the awakening, impatience. It's built in. You can hardly wait to accomplish what you've come for. Well, if you're going to do it, then there is a list. First one, drop the mythology. You've got a mythology around God, and it's so prevalent on the planet, it's everywhere, and you've got to have to drop it. It's so difficult to even begin to explain it. How do you picture God? The creative source of the universe who loves you so much that you are part of a plan, that you are called a child of God, that you're a piece of the universe and there's no beginning to you, and there will be no end, and the whole universe is like a speck of time. How do you picture the parent God, the one in you, the one that's eternal, that's part of your soul group? How do you picture that? There's mythology on the earth that takes humanism and puts it on God, and God has feelings, and God has punishment, and God has rewards, and none of it is so. God is God, of physics that does not argue with itself. That is perfect in its own system. That is beautiful, and He is a oneness that cannot be denied. God is one of the only energies that exist that you know of that is not polarized. For it is singular and beautiful and one, and so you come into the planet, and what are you told? That there's a mythology that says that God is displeased with that or pleased with this. Forget about it. There is no pleased or displeased. There is only love. Do you understand? You come in with a mythology that says perhaps you were born a certain way so that you can climb certain stairs and get to God better. There is no getting to God better, dear ones. You are already a piece of it. Do you understand? The paradigm that has you graduating so you are more acceptable to Spirit is very human of you. Human nature placed upon God. How do you see angels? You put skin and wings on them and give them names. How human of you. Do you know that doesn't exist? In the singularity of God, there are energies that are part of the soup of creation and present themselves and speak. I am one of them, and yet I'm all of them. I am not singular. There is no cryon. There is an energy on the other side of the veil that has been given a name for you that means something else, and you recognize the energy of it, and I'm different every time I come in. As my human host clears his filters, the purity of God changes in the channels. Did you know that? You won't find individual entities in the soup. There are energies, but the energies, as specific as you may see them. For instance, Archangel Michael, male, powerful, angelic, with a message. Male just for you. Polarized is for you, means power. Angelic, angel, wings, that's for you also. It means divine. Pay attention. Power, pay attention. Message for you. It's all for you. Designed for your reality, and none of it is so. Archangel Michael is a piece of a whole, beautiful. Every time Archangel Michael speaks, it's from all of us. Did you know that? But it's a singular message of love. It never conflicts with itself. Just like physics does not conflict with cryon, because I am part of that, and it is part of me. We are not separate. We are not independent. You walk around in corporeal bodies and you have names. Well, we don't. We are one, and every message is from all of us. Do you realize that it resounds in your corporeal body because the divine party in you is also part of us and receives the message at the same time it is given, and you resound with it if your filters are clear? So there's talks of war in heaven. Can you imagine physics arguing with itself? There is no polarity in God. There are no fallen angels with God. The mythology is there, and in all the energy it served you. For it helped give a parable to you to understand perhaps a little more in your language, in your reality, to understand a little more about the dark and the light. But it's not true. There's no such thing as a division of love. Love is pure. It is the creation source. So all of these mythological stories are for you to help understand. And that was in the old energy, and now we're asking you to drop it. To see it for what it is in its majesty and splendor, in the beauty that is in you. Not divided, not polarized. You don't have to fight a devil. In the corporeal human being, there is a duality. That's the duality that you're going to fight. On Earth, in the crystalline grid, in all of Gaia, there's a duality as you placed it there. That's what you've been fighting. You fight to test in 3D of the planet in order to find the divine, pure love of God. It has always been divine and always been pure and never polarized. Drop the mythology. Do not attempt to put human nature attributes on a divine source of God. And if you hear it and you do it, you know that's what children do, and now you're mature. That's one. The next one. Don't misinterpret. It's called accountability. It's not what you think. Your parents told you it's time to be accountable for what you do. Take responsibility for what you do, and so in your reality, you're thinking of it one way, but you haven't heard of what we have to say yet. I want you to take accountability, old soul, for the full spectrum of who you are. If something good happens, dear ones, listen to me. I want you to take accountability for it. You hear what I'm saying? Human nature, if something bad happens, you did it. If something good happens, God did it. You know I'm right, and that's how you were brought up. Now it's time for you to take accountability of the full spectrum. What have you been able to do? Has there been healing in your life? Have you been able to lift yourself up past a certain thing? Have you crossed bridges that you never thought you could cross? Have you walked away from certain situations and remained strong and upright with integrity? Have you done it? And the answer is yes. In this room, because I know who's here, and it's time for you to look at that and say, I did it, and I did it because in me is the strength of God. In me is the ability to rewrite the engrams of my personality to become anything that I have been. To bring old consciousness of past lives and present them into current consciousness to solve problems. To bring strength that I didn't think I had. And you've done it, and you sit there and wonder what's happened. I tell you what's happened, you did it. It's time to take accountability and be responsible for the good things in your life. Human beings and human nature, everything you've been taught. You're so willing to criticize your own consciousness. So willing to sit there and think, well, I created my own problem, and now I'm going to have to solve my own problem. It's time for you to stop for a minute and look what you've done. I want you to take accountability, old soul, for slogging through the old energy of centuries in order to be alive today, to watch this marker take place and give yourself a high five, for because you deserve it. Relax, breathe deeply, and know that you are caught. It's time. Number 3, What do you think is happening in the future, and what have you been told? It's time for you to raise a consciousness that is less than positive. It is true that you have a cellular structure that responds to everything you think and say. What are you thinking it's saying? In discussion with someone, you say, well, I'm afraid of the future. I'm afraid that this will happen. I'm afraid of this. What have you just told your whole consciousness? You're still in fear, and you can't walk forward as an old soul with a piece of God in you, about to do the things you came for and then say to the cellular structure, well, yeah, but I'm afraid of it. This is kind of like accountability, isn't it? Watch what you say. The simplest things that you would say out loud, your whole structure hears it. It takes its cue from you, from what you think, your actions. If you had a talk with the masters who walk the earth, you could sit across a table from them. They could share with you their innermost beautiful thoughts. Can you imagine any of them saying, I'm afraid of this, or I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid the humans won't do this or do that. And they won't ever do that. None of them, for they know the principles of accountability. They know about energy. They know about cellular structure. They know how consciousness can affect everything. They know, and this is what we are asking you to do. Write the future. Don't be afraid of it, and even if you have reservations deep inside, don't verbalize them. With the very speaking into the air, sense an energy, not only of yourself but those around you. Watch what you say about others. See the God in them first. This is accountability for being a piece of God, dear ones. Become less human. Set the paradigm for the next human nature. That was 2. 3 is controversial. Some of you aren't going to like it, and now we call the elders and the ancients into the room, and they're here. You know how I know? Because you brought them in when you walked in the room, because they are you. Past lives, the ancients of the planet, the very first ones are in you. You walked in with them. They're in your Akash. So we're going to pull them out for a moment and ask them to stand around the room, because they're going to be needed later by the way in the gathering of the feminine in the room. I want them to stand around it and listen to this next thing, and I want you to listen to them, if you can, because of what I'm going to say. Number 3, drop inappropriate tradition. And so what's inappropriate? Anything that worked in the old energy. Are you ready for this? Anything that worked in the old energy. So we're going to ask the elders and ask the ancients, is this appropriate? And they're going to speak with one voice, and here's what they're going to say. The things that we developed for you, including even some of the ceremonial attributes, were developed in order to fight the old energy. In order to survive in a certain kind of energy, processes, procedures, rules. In order to give alignment to your body, in order to achieve certain balances, in order to work with an old energy that is not here. It's not here. What you learned in grade school on the playground, is that your reality today? Is that what you're going to do? The answer is of course not, because you grew up. You get the metaphor. Don't you and the ancients are standing here and saying, the traditions are wiped clean, and right now you are going to set the standard for the new traditions, for the maturity of God's spiritual common sense. The energy is shifted. Start with traditions because, dear ones, someday in hundreds of years, that is what the ceremonies are going to be. You know what your ancestors did. You will be the indigenous of the doers and will have set the standards for what an enlightened soul who is spiritually mature does in the new energy. Do you understand? If you question it, I would ask you to use everything in your body and your intuitive senses right now to ask the ancestors, perhaps even those who come from your own tribe, is this accurate or not? They will lay their hands on you and they will say, blessed are you who are the new elders. Please take it from us. Here is the mantle of our wisdom of the past to be placed upon you as the future. Please set the standards. Make the new traditions. This will be misunderstood. It's guaranteed, because there are humans who will fight this and not understand. They will say this, wait a minute, isn't God the same yesterday, today, and forever? How can you now rewrite the traditions? And I will tell you this, and I've said this before. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But the human's relationship and maturity to God's self is always in motion. The traditions are men, not God. God didn't make the traditions, human did. Time to rewrite them. I'll give you one more. I want you all to take a trip with me in your mind. It's a beautiful one. I want you to remember something beautiful. I want you to remember falling in love, not with your dog, not with your child, but with another human. I'm not asking you how it turned out. I'm asking you what it felt like when it was new. Can you remember looking into the eyes of another human being and having a suspension of just about everything? Can you go there with me? Can you remember sighing a lot, feeling your heart beat a certain way? Can you remember being so open, so trusting, and just wanting them around with you, them looking back at you and saying, I feel the same way? I want to reopen that in you. I want you to go there because there's a reason, because I want you to be able to do that in the mirror. I want you to fall in love with yourself so much, and there's no ego there. There's no ego when you fell in love with another human being. You were egoless. You just wanted them, and that's how I'd like you to see yourself. All you want is the God in you, to be so present that it is a honeymoon for the rest of your life, that it is the mindset that allows creative energy to change paradigms on the planet. Human is comfortable with themselves to such a degree that there is no judgment, there's no ego, because they're happy to be with themselves. And it's an advanced concept. It's an enlightened concept. It is not easy because the duality will always try to interfere. And dear ones, I'm telling you, a time is coming. And you can start looking at this time around where there's going to be more coherence and energy. It's going to shape up, and there won't be this year of full moons anymore for you. You'll feel it. Maybe you ought to even design a ceremony around it. Set up some traditions. There are some things that are going to happen in this room in a moment that are going to set new traditions. And that is why they're happening. And you're going to see more of this, and people will look at it and they'll laugh. They'll say, well, it's nothing we ever saw before. And it's probably all this New Age fluff, not understanding it's exactly what we were asking for. It's time for a new paradigm, and how you approach some of the most ancient things you do that would honor God. Time to understand the maturity of throwing away the mythology of God, the humanizing of God, and seeing what it is. Then recognizing it in yourself and falling in love with it to the degree you leave the room different than you came. There'll be more of these kinds of things, but this was enough for one day. The ancestors stick around because the room is going to heat up soon. And so it is.